India has two permanent villains stalking them in tests. Steve Smith is batting, or even shadow batting, through every minute of BGT matches. And against England, it's Joe Root. These two are constantly spamming Indians. Imagine running in at full steam, only to see Root get off strike by dabbing the ball to third, or Smith shuffling across and knocking the ball to leg. Over and over again. Both of these players are fairly wedded to their methods, so these series often feature the same shots on repeat. Like a kid who knows one move in a fighting game, but does it so well that no one can beat them. India have bowled 17.7% of their deliveries against England to Root when he's played. That number goes up to nearly 19% when it comes to Smith. So if you tune into a random over in one of these series, chances are you'll see Root or Smith face a ball. The first time both of them played India was in the 2012-2013 series. Root made his debut at Nagpur, while Smith played the final two tests of the series. It was clear from Root's debut that he had the kind of game to play against India that many English players simply don't. Smith was not quite as obvious, but again, he's clearly made to play spin in ways his nation is not always known for. In Root's first match, he wasn't the only generational cricketer to make his debut. Ravi Jadeja did as well. So let's take this match as the birth of India's reign and call that modern cricket. When you look at batting averages, two more names pop up: Dinesh Chandimal and Travis Head. Chandimal won a test from 192 runs behind and played a role in drawing one in India. Head needs no such introduction. AB de Villiers is a great who's performed well against India and still has a cult-like fan base because of his IPL heroics. And are you even a real Indian Test fan if you don't hate the outside edge of Dean Elgar's bat? Both the South Africans have scored more than 40 runs per dismissal. The New Zealand duo of Will Young and Kane Williamson just miss out on that mark. On match factor, Head stands out even more, while de Villiers and Elgar also overtake Chandimal. But it's mostly been these six batters who have enraged Indian fans and bowlers. Unlike Smith and Root, the other four haven't done it over a long period of time. They're cameos. The main players are clearly going to come from the long careers within the big three, and Head debuted quite a few years later. So these two have almost 6,000 runs against India, which is more than the next four batters combined. Versus India, Root has the sixth most runs against any opposition ever, and Smith is also in the top 50 list. Root has more than 800 runs against India than second place. Smith is fourth. These are India's two final bosses, perhaps never more obvious than in the last test, where once Root was dismissed, the rest of England were exposed. Smith is an overpowered glitch character, the one the devs forgot to fix. He knows all the cheat codes. Root is a precision build. No wasted moves, no missed combos. Like he understands the algorithmic patterns around him. Against modern India, these two men are trapped in an endless innings. Ross Taylor couldn't see at night or when the clouds were in. Eventually, he had to see an eye specialist who would fix his eyesight. In the 2 years before the change, he still averaged more than 50 in international cricket. The top level of batting talent can basically see in the dark. That is who we are talking about in our new book, The Art of Batting. Head over and order your copy today. Joe Root has the better average, but Steve Smith's match factor is higher. That implies that the other batters have averaged less in Smith's matches. If we assume a match average of over 40 as high scoring, Root has appeared in 10 such games out of 35, while Smith is at 5 from 24. 3 of those 5 matches for Smith were in the 2014-15 BGT. It was an important series for multiple reasons. It was the first time Australia had played after Phil Hughes had passed, and because of the emergence of Steve Smith and Virat Kohli. That summer, those two just went head-to-head. Smith had the most runs in that series, albeit facing a weaker attack than Kohli. But despite that level of run gluttony, it perhaps wasn't Smith's magnum opus versus India. That came when he toured and piled on almost 500 runs with much less help in away conditions. And they came into that series after a bad run in Asia. Looking at the averages by individual series, the first time it drops below 30 is the 22-23 season in India. The final test at Ahmedabad was a run fest, but Smith couldn't cash in. Even in the most recent BGT, his average wasn't particularly flattering, but his 2 tons certainly were, and it clearly had shown he has not lost it. He finished as the third highest run getter in the series behind Head and Jaiswal. This means that Smith has 2 all-time great series, home and away. Contextually, he was pretty good in the others as well, apart from the last India tour. But when India travel, they've been troubled more by Root. He has 2 ridiculous series at home, 2014 and 2021. You could certainly make the case that the latter was even better than Smith's 2014-15. A better bowling attack, much less help, trickier wickets. Even this time, he finished with the most runs for England. Not that India's coach noticed. His 2018 was a bit similar to Smith's last series. Despite the low average, Root finished with the 4th most runs. When Root travels to India, his record isn't as absurd. Sure, he's still very solid. Averaging about 45 there in this era is very rare, and certainly worth cherishing. The issue is he hasn't had a defining series the way that Smith did in 16-17. Root also made the 2nd most runs in the series that happened in the same season, but quite a few other batters averaged over 40. In 21-12, he had the big test in Jaipur, but he didn't really carry on that form in the next 3 games, and that wasn't against a very strong attack. In 23-24, he made runs in the final matches, but he had a bunch of low scores before that. The surfaces weren't as tough to bat on, and he finished 6th on the runs tally. Even Zach Crawley outscored him. It is a shame that we haven't seen Root versus India on Australian pitches, and that we've seen Smith only once on English wickets, when they didn't have Jasprit Bumrah. For players of this quality, the 3 equally challenging but vastly different pitches constitute different levels to beat. And if we know anything about Root and Smith, it's their incredible ability to adapt to any challenge. We are also willing to crowdfund an entire series to see Joe Root facing Jasprit Bumrah in Australia. Root has played in high-scoring matches more often, but he's better than Smith in tough ones where the average is below 30. He averages 62 with a match factor of 2.56, while Smith is at 35 and 1.45. When no one can score, Root can, but Smith is absolutely incredible when the matches are higher scoring. On a flat wicket, it's basically impossible to dislodge it. However, it's very similar when we look at the same metric for tests in India. Both are averaging in the high 30s with a match factor of about 1.6, but Smith clearly cashes in a lot more than Root when the other batters perform better. The numbers suggest Root is at his absolute best against India on tough home pitches. Smith excels in high score stages. Root thrives when it's permadeath. When you come in matters. Are you up against Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Siraj on fresh legs when the team is in trouble? Or do you have a comfy ride to the crease? Remember Travis Head smashing Indian bowlers around in the last Border Gavaskar Trophy. His captain Pat Cummins praised the top 3 for delaying his entry points. When they are into bat in the first 20 overs against India, they're both still incredible. Root averages 48 and Smith is up at 51. So coming in early doesn't really affect either of them that much. Contrast that with someone like Kohli, who doesn't really deal with the newish ball as well. He averages about 36 against England and Australia when he has the same entry point. Root has batted 71 times in the top 3 in tests. While Smith's opening experiment failed, he did have outstanding numbers at 1 down. On Indian pitches, Smith has 3 tons in 11 innings and averages 62 when he enters within the first 20 overs. Root is nearly at 47 with 2 centuries and 5 50s in 19 knocks. So Smith's clearly better when coming in early on Indian surfaces. We also looked at an innings-by-innings split. Root is elite across a match, though there's a relative dip in the 3rd innings. He also loves the 2nd knock against India. Smith's methods of bossing India are very different. He's basically Bradman at the start of the game, but he has ordinary numbers otherwise. It means you can trust Root more at any random stage of the game. But Smith runs away with it in the first and sleeps, or I suppose in his case doesn't, through the rest. This matters in India because batting gets progressively harder on those decks. But with varying sample sizes, it's not really possible to compare them effectively by each innings. So if we keep it simple and break it down by the team's 1st and 2nd innings, as you would expect of a Western batter, they both clearly prefer the former. Great performances in losing causes enhance a player's legacy because it usually means their team has let them down. In victories, Root's match factor is 2.24 and Smith's is at 2.34. In losses, Smith is exactly par, while Root's average is 14% better than the other top 6. Weirdly enough, Root is ahead in draws despite the fact that Smith loves a flat pitch. But in result matches overall, they're both at 1.5%, although Smith is marginally ahead. So what we learn is that Root has played in more result games and losses than his Aussie counterpart. Smith is arcade mode. epic runs, and ridiculous high scores. Root is survival mode, attritional scores, and outlasting the chaos. The hype for Root keeps increasing as he sprints up the all-time runs list. But we still have Steve Smith a fair bit ahead of him as a test batter overall. Australia obviously don't play as many tests per year as England, and Smith has also missed games thanks to, Sandpaper Gate. But the Aussie has perhaps the best peak since Bradman and is a better all conditions player. But there's no doubt that Root's form this decade is better, perhaps even the best in the world, along with the likes of Jaiswal and Harry Brook. He also deserves credit for being a huge part of the baseball style, despite achieving so much success conventionally. Most of the greatest players ever use their style no matter what. They don't suddenly change on the whim of a madman. This patch mode version of Root gives an extra element of strike rate compared to Smith, but it also leads to him playing reckless shots like on the last tour of India. Root's resume against India just seems a lot more complete. Smith is better in India, but the gulf between Root in England and Smith in Australia appears way bigger. It's unfortunate Smith missed out when India had their best pace trio in 2018-2019. And Root obviously scored loads of runs versus a superb Indian attack for 21-22. Fewer series for Smith is also a little annoying when doing this comparison. But a lot of this also comes down to what kind of player scares or excites you the most. The Australian has become almost like a meta build. Half the world looked at copying him, but no one could actually get the code right. Root skills are softer, and they should be easier to replicate, but he's like a perfect algorithm who only loses track when speedrunning. In terms of the final boss, Smith is the biggest and baddest one because he comes at you so hard in the first innings, he can ruin the entire rest of your game. Root is harder to kill at random intervals, but he's a lot less likely to ruin your game even as he drains you for longer. But you also need to think about your weapons. In modern times, India have had R. Ashwin, Ravi Jadeja, and Jasprit Bumrah. When playing against any team, captains have been able to select any one of these three and just make the game go their way. Root is better against every single one of them compared to Smith. But as always, we're nitpicking greatness here. Considering the staggering number of runs, it's surprising that India hasn't done more rage quitting against them. But if you've got a sword and a revolver, Smith is unbeatable. But even if you're armed with the grenade launcher and the minigun, Root is still almost impossible to beat. For India to win their biggest series, these are the final bosses they have to defeat or go around for more than a decade.